All right.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Doug Tone from the AA Roads forum, and also GribbleNation.org.
I am Alps from alpsroads.net. Here on YouTube, I go under zoning permit, but really nothing interesting. This is where you want to be with roadwaywiz. Tonight we are your hosts, Doug and I, as opposed to the usual, and our guest tonight is going to be your normal host. So we're going to turn things on their heads a bit, and hopefully this will be interesting for those of you who've watched Dan all these months, if not years, and want to learn more about the person behind the videos.
Yeah, it's kind of his day in court. Or maybe not that. Maybe not court, but
I think that's about right. But, we'll monitor the chat box here. So, as much as Doug and I have come up with some questions to try to probe into Dan's philosophies on life, the universe, and everything, you've got questions, I'm sure, from all this time. So we want to try to get as much in here as we can and serve everyone's needs here. But also, since Dan kind of screwed me over by only interviewing me with civil engineering, I want to kind of screw him over. So
we'll have some questions that are not civil engineering related too. So,
well, guys, that was quite an opening. I can tell you definitely rehearsed that time and again before we went live.
Very much.
So, great job by you.
We have to give your standard COVID briefing, by the way.
What's that?
Dr. Wiz speaks on the dangers of COVID and the importance now as we get into the summer season of continuing to something mask, 6 feet, something.
Yeah, well, I'm not a doctor, so don't ask me.
Okay.
Yeah. Jesus, Steve, I'm an engineer, not a doctor. Or something to that effect. Well, it's nice to be a guest on my own channel. I'm glad that we agreed to this bizarre setup, but it's nice to have Steve and Doug here tonight, and I'm sure that a lot of you have been wondering a lot of the stories and the backstory or how a lot of this came to be with me. So I'm looking forward to having a little chat with you guys about all of that. So I'm not in charge, guys. So
yeah.
You guys,
okay.
So
I'm gonna start
to ask. Yeah.
So I'm going to start on this one.
All right.
So Dan, starting early in life. When did you think that there were signs that this was going to be a life passion of yours for, basically, a lifelong interest in, roads? I know that a lot of us had been looking at maps, like by the age of 3, for instance, including myself.
Well, I was definitely one of those people. One of the things that I've found really interesting about talking with so many of you over the past several weeks is that we all have very much the same story. Like, we all started off looking at maps, looking at, pictures, from very early on. Like, as you said, about 3 years old. I can remember, when I was about 3 or 4 years old, really getting into the old Rand McNally maps of New York, New Jersey. Delaware was a favorite, one of mine too. Just reading the names, reading the town names, reading the route numbers, looking at all the lines on the map. And it was all really, it fascinated me. And I know that it really played a big part in my early development as a reader. I know that, one of the things that came up early on, and I have it on good authority from my parents that this is the case, but one of the reasons why I was so quick to develop in that manner was because I was a map reader. And I would just, if there's a map sitting on the table or on the counter over here, I would probably start looking at it. And then after 5 minutes of looking at it, I would be like, all right, this isn't New Jersey, so I want to look at New Jersey now. So I'd go and look at the New Jersey one for a little while and look at roads of, Newark or Camden for a little while because, it was a lot more interesting than looking at Colorado or whatever. But, it really started from an early age for me. I know that on the map side of things, it started around the same time as a lot of you guys, like 3 or 4. And then the road tripping aspect of it, I know from like early childhood, going back to as far as I can remember, there were a lot of road trips that I would take from where I live in the Hudson Valley. We would go up to Binghamton a lot. My dad's family is from there, so we would make that trip pretty frequently when I was really young. And we also make the trip down to Wilmington, Delaware frequently when I was young, because that's where my mom's family's from. And really like learning, like seeing those roads, like those were the first road trip memories that I had was, Route 17 across the Catskills and the Jersey Turnpike, the Delaware Memorial Bridge. Those were the first roads that I vividly remember enjoying. And from that, you could go down the list of things like, the bridges. The Delaware Memorial was the first bridge that I really had a great interest in. The turnpike with the signs, reading road signs became a thing for me, like very early on. And at one point, like when I was pretty young, like I had all the exits along Route 17 memorized and all the exits on the turnpike memorized. It just kind of happened spontaneously from that early love affair with these roads. But that's really where it started. I don't know that I knew what engineering was when I was 3 years old, but I kind of felt like, when I look at stuff like the Delaware Memorial, and as a young kid, I was like, ooh, I don't know what that is, but I want to do that someday.
So when did you figure out, I guess, what engineering is? When did you learn that this could be a career path and figure out how to get on the path to where you are now, career-wise?
I think that, my dad's a civil engineer, but he's not, like, civil engineering is a very broad profession. I think you would agree with that, Steve. Like, there's, your design engineers, there's your electrical engineers, there's your mechanical engineers, there's, and within civil, there's, like, design and environmental and wastewater and all sorts of other stuff, and then you get into your structural and your bridges and roads and all that stuff. So it's a very broad field, and so like what my dad does is a lot different than what I ultimately decided to do. I suppose that's probably where I was first introduced to the idea of what the word engineering was. But it probably, like, around as I was working my way through school and I became aware of what engineering was, and then I connected the dots to what, going back to when I was a younger kid with the maps and the bridges and the road signs and all that, and realizing that, hey, you could actually, there are careers out there where you can do that stuff. That was pretty darn cool to me, and that was probably when I just decided, I just want to do this for a living if I can.
Is that high school or college for you, or
no?
When did you connect that?
This is earlier than that. Probably, I probably would say middle school to be safe. And that's the thing. Like I always told myself I was going to be an engineer, and that's all I ever thought about. I didn't really have a plan B as far as what I was going to do, and
sounds like me. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, engineering was it for me. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the bridge guy. I wanted to be the guy working on some big bridge down in Tarrytown. That was my dream. And I just I said, okay, this is what I was going to do, and I hoped that one day it would somehow work out for me.
So, how did you discover the online hobby of road geeking?
Yeah, the thing is that, as I say all of this about maps and about road signs and about bridges and all that, at the same time, I didn't know anybody else who liked this stuff. Like, I thought I was the only guy who liked to read road signs and all that stuff. Like, I was not aware of a larger community that was interested in roads and bridges and their construction and their operation and whatnot. I can't remember exactly what triggered me searching for it. I think what happened was I had watched a documentary on bridges where they were talking about the back and forth plans for the Strait of Messina Bridge in Italy. And that's an interesting job in itself if you want to look that up. I'll let you do that on your own time. But somewhere along the way, I started actually Googling bridge information, because all the pictures that I had seen at bridges were in hard copy books as I was growing up. I hadn't really ever been introduced to what might be on the internet. This is 2002 roughly, so I'm just starting high school at this point. And so I started, that was the first search that I can remember doing. And then I said, well, I got all these these bridge pictures of all these other structures that I've grown up with, but I wonder what else might be out there. So I believe I started by just looking for bridge information. And somewhere along the way in 2002, I'm going to say, I came across a website called nycroads.com. And around the same time, I can't say exactly when, but aaroads.com was also something I discovered. Steve Anderson has done an amazing job with the nycroads.com family of sites for many, many years. So I think his was the site that I discovered first. And I was looking through, his and other people's sites. Eventually I discovered Steve's work. I discovered Doug's work within a couple of years. And it really amazed me that there were so many other people out there who actually liked this stuff, who actually thought that it was really cool, and that they actually had done their own work and their own research and their own photographic compilations. I just thought it was amazing that there were so many other people out there who shared my interest in it. And of course, I was too young still, so I wasn't able to actually partake in the hobby. But actually, I'll show you what I did. I probably haven't looked through this for many, many years. Seriously, I might have looked through this early in college, and then I put it away and never looked through it again. But this is a. You want to know what Steve Anderson's site looks like in paper form? This is it.
It's pretty big.
It's pretty big, right? This is here's the cover of it. This is what I did.
Yeah.
This was 2003 or so when I put this together. And this is, see, I got it all tabbed. See, look at this. I got New York and New Jersey all the way up to Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and all of his sites are basically here. I printed it out so I could read it, because I didn't like staring at the screen. I had to print stuff out in order to read it. But this is all Steve's stuff. Hey, look, here's 195 in New Jersey. So there's just a. I mean, as you guys know, his stuff is just an amazing reference.
Yeah.
For anything.
Yeah, his site was actually the first site I discovered through the online hobby. Of course, I think that's the case for a lot of people who are from the Northeast, especially.
Oh yeah, I think I've said this to you guys both live and off the air that Steve Anderson basically wrote the Bible of road enthusiasm for us. He basically showed us how to do it, and he was the first to do it, and he still is the best to have done it, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know that anybody has ever done as good a job as he has of painting the picture of the process that went into all these projects, and really giving us all the backstory and all the relevant information that you need, and just a little bit more. His stuff was great. It was such an influence on me. I know it was an influence on all of you. I remember, and I told Steve this when I chatted with him before, but you know how his site is laid out, right? Like, you've got let's say you're on NYC roads, and you've got the roads of Metro New York, the bridges of Metro New York, right? So you click on one of those, and then you have your different subcategories after that, and then there's one that you just look at and you're like, whoa, and that is the one that says unbuilt. And you're like, wait a minute, now we're getting serious here. Now you're telling me that there's stuff that was on planning maps that they never actually built. I think that was probably the point when I went through some sort of transition into okay, this is going to be much bigger than I thought it ever could have been, because I had no idea. When I'm a young kid looking at maps and I'm looking at roads that get built, I always have assumed, okay, you plan a road, you build a road, that's the end of the story. But now you're telling me that there are roads that were planned but nobody ever got around to building? Wow, they're bridges that people thought about building but never built. All that stuff is just amazing to me. To this day, it's amazing to me. I know that as a 15-year-old aspiring engineer, it was fascinating, even back then. Steve's work really was a game changer for me, and I know that my early searches online for material was a big turning point as far as how I would end up someday contributing to the hobby.
So obviously NYC roads, big influence. AA roads. You mentioned my site and Doug's. Are there any other sites or people or resources that you would point to as some of your earlier influences, and then who still now would you call your influences at this point?
Well, I know that I mentioned Steve Anderson by name earlier, and Alex Nitzman was another one who was very influential. Alex was the one who basically wrote the Bible on how to take road photos in Delaware, because there wasn't anything else really in the stockpile from Delaware at that point. And Delaware is a state that I cared about a lot because, as I said, I have family roots there, but that's also one of the areas that I would travel to the most frequently. So those are the roads that I would see the most often, and so I naturally wanted to see more coverage of those particular areas. Alex was very influential. As I said, you and Doug, I feel like I discovered Steve's work pretty early on too, but I was late to get into it. I wasn't as big a fan of what he was doing early on. It's one of those things that's an acquired taste, I feel.
Thank you,
Steve. Well, you're welcome. I wasn't quite ready for Steve's stuff when I first found it, but it wasn't. I think because I was looking for a more structured thing, whereas Steve kind of goes and does stuff all over the place, and it's.
I go route by route. Excuse me.
You do, but
he tells his story.
He tells a story along the way, and he's very good at it too. He does a great job of personalizing it. But It was not my cup of tea when I found it. However, that did change. That did moderate over the years. Influences nowadays. Well, all you guys continue to do that. I always look to you guys when I'm filming new areas, for instance. I know that for years on my YouTube channel, if there is a historic overview that Steve has done for the road that I've covered, I'll post the link to it in my description on any video that I do. I just think that you guys are definitely a part of this to some degree, even today. I don't know. I don't know who else has influenced me recently. I think what's happened in the last few years especially is that I've gone from being influenced by people to people being influenced by me. And as I've become more of a visible presence in the hobby, I think you've sort of noticed a switch happen. Maybe I've, gotten to the point where I have enough seniority where I'm, now somebody that people look up to. I don't really know how true that is, but I think you can definitely see it. There is a market change when it comes to, people on YouTube and how, you're seeing new channels start up and you're seeing different presentation styles emerge. And, I like to think that I had a little bit of something to do with all of that.
I'm going to throw a little curveball at you then. A name that comes up pretty often when we're talking about you and what you give us is Freeway Jam. Does similar thing. He does his road videos. He has his crowd of followers. He has a bit different audience, a bit different style, but very similar in terms of the content he delivers. So what's your take on the Freeway Jam arena?
I think he's, I think that he's been around a long time. He's got quite an audience. He's got quite a body of work. I think that the way that he presents is how he feels he should best present his material. The thing about YouTube is that it's really up to you how you want to do it. You have the right to take a section of road and present it however you want. I bet you if you found 50 people and you said to them, okay, give us your honest version, like make a road video of this section of highway and do it. You can do anything you want. You can put anything in it. You can, put any kind of effects in it that you want, and have at it. I think you would have like 20 or 30 different versions of that video. Because it's so personalized, right? Like, we all experience the roads in our own unique way. And he has just a right to do whatever he wants to do, as I have the right to present it in whatever way I want to present it. I don't think that there's any kind of... I don't think there's any kind of problem with that. I would never try to tell somebody that what they're doing is mindless and stupid. So I don't really understand why some people would feel that way. 'Cause this is about you. This is about your creativity and how you have fun and how you see the hobby. So just do your own thing, and don't worry if somebody does it different than you.
Not really a rival. Well, not really an influence, just sort of an alternative, is the way you see it.
I didn't have any influences on YouTube when I started, because the people on YouTube at the time looked at what I was doing and they hated it. So I don't know what it was like. I don't know what it's like to be a mentor, because I didn't have a mentor in the YouTube arena. I found my way on my own. And I built an audience on my own, and I built, you know, the brand, if you will, if you want to call it that. See, here's the brand, okay? So I didn't have anybody influencing me on the YouTube side of things. Like, that all just happened. And so even today, it's hard for me to be that guy who mentors other people, because I don't know what it's like. You know, I mean, nobody was there cheering me on in the early years. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm bitter about it, but, you know, nobody was there to do that. So I don't know what it's like to stand at the front of the line and say, hey, you know, you're awesome. I like what you're doing. You know, let's work on this. Let's try this instead. You know, like, let's have some back and forth here about what you're doing, instead of saying, no, that's stupid. You know, like, you know, we all know how productive that is, right? So yeah, I would just say that my it's different in the YouTube arena for sure. You know, I'm kind of a one-man show as far as that's concerned.
Okay, so what led you to become a content creator within the hobby, and particularly what led you to doing videos as opposed to taking pictures or writing articles or things like that?
Well, first of all, I never would have had the time to write, because, you know, I wouldn't have had the time for it, and I just didn't have the patience for it. You know, I have a hard enough time just writing descriptions on my individual videos, because the writing aspect of it doesn't interest me as much. The video thing happened because, and I can tell you the story of my first video camera. It was Christmas of 2009, I want to say, and I had asked my parents for a video camera that year. And it wasn't because of roads. It was because I wanted to film some of my on-campus shenanigans at the University of Buffalo, where I was going to school at the time. And so they got me this camera, and I have it right here. This was the first camera that I owned. This is also the first camera that went on to record the first road videos that you ever saw on the channel. And after a few months of doing that, like the campus stuff, I got the idea of saying, well, like, I really liked certain drives that I went on as a kid, and this also coincided with the first time that I had a car. So now I was able to travel independently and all that stuff. So I said, okay, what if I try to sort of recapture some of that stuff from my childhood that I really was fond of? You know, like, I mean, I mentioned some of the greatest hits before, but, you know, those kinds of drives that I was really fond of as a youngster, I kind of wanted to record them, you know, for posterity and whatnot. So that's what I did. I spent a summer in 2010, you know, filming a bunch of stuff, and, you know, it was all over the place. It wasn't just in New York. It was like up near Binghamton. It was down towards Delaware. You know, like all the places that I had visited in my earlier years. It was really kind of just a tribute to my early love of travel more than anything else. So I put all of that together, and I had all these videos amassed, and I said, all right, now what do I want to do with all these videos that are just sitting around? So I got the idea. I got the idea for YouTube not because I wanted to have a channel, but because I wanted to have somewhere to put the videos as a sort of backup. Because the year before, I had gone through a very nasty hard drive crash where I lost a lot of stuff from high school and college. And I was at the point where I said, you know, I could get another hard drive and just stick them there and hope for the best, or I could put them in some sort of what we nowadays call cloud and have them be preserved somewhere so that in case something similar happens down the line, I at least have them somewhere that I can reach later on. So that's where the idea for YouTube came from. It was not, I did not intend to be a YouTube star. I fully, at least early on, was just trying to find a place to back up my files. So that's how the channel was created. As far as the name of the channel is concerned, listen, like, if I could go back in time 10 years, I would pick something that's a lot easier to say for my teeth.
We would have probably picked something different for Gribble Nation.
Yeah, well, the Gribble Nation has a very interesting story behind it.
Right, it does.
Yeah, I don't have such an interesting story as far as my channel name. I do remember that I thought about naming the channel Roadway Warrior, which is even worse for my teeth.
I think there is one of those.
What's that? What happened?
I think there is already a Roadway Warrior.
There's somebody out there, but you know what? I didn't like the word warrior being in there because it just seemed too over the top. It seemed too pretentious, maybe. So I backed away from that. I wanted to keep the word roadway in there because I wanted it to be as generic as possible. Because people oftentimes with the names of their channels kind of pigeonhole themselves into certain specialties that, you know, they don't necessarily want to be known for. You know, if the word freeway is in your channel name, people are obviously going to expect that you're filming a very specific kind of road, right? So I said, all right, well, what's the most generic thing I can think of that doesn't kind of commit me to one branch or another? So I settled on roadway, and I you know, out of warrior came whiz, and there you go. The rest is history.
Okay. And then how did you get into the webinars?
The rest is history.
Yep. And then how do you get into the webinars, the live drives, and the virtual tours that we all know for you now? What was the bridge from taking videos, as a result of, basically just backing them up so you didn't have backing them up to save like another hard drive crash, to sharing them in this format, now with all the, the fun things that you're doing, with your channel?
Well, I'm glad that you think that I'm finally doing fun things after 10 years. Thank you, Doug.
That's why we can't see his face right now. He's embarrassed.
Okay. Well, all the stuff that, Doug, you're mentioning happened very recently. The webinars only started a year ago, maybe. The idea for the webinar idea came from two things. One of them actually was online review classes for the PE exam. And for those of you who are not engineers and don't know what I'm talking about, the PE exam is an exam that you take several years after you graduate college, after you've accrued enough experience. And if you pass it, you become a licensed engineer who can sign off on, plans of all kinds, or you can like run a project, some stuff like that. Steve's one.
Or you can be annoying on MTR.
You could do that too, yeah.
Yeah, it means you always are right, is what it means.
That's right, yeah. See, I'm always right. Steve's always right, that would be interesting when we get together and talk, but...
we always agree. It's great.
Yeah. So I was taking these online review classes for the exam, and after my 5th or 6th session on soil mechanics, I was thinking about, it would be interesting if somebody tried that with roads. Like had some sort of academy of some kind where you could just talk about a city for an hour, or talk about highway design or bridge design or something like that. Something that's relative to what we do. And around the same time as I was getting that idea, I made my trip out to Hawaii, which was a groundbreaking trip because nobody had ever done a proper evaluation and full documentation of the Hawaiian interstate system before then. I was the first person to do that. So I kind of wanted to take that information that I had just gotten and put it into some sort of presentation, if you will. I kind of wanted to see what would happen with that. So the first webinar that I did, actually the excuse I gave for doing it was that it coincided with me surpassing the 10,000 subscribers mark. So that, I believe that's actually in the title of the webinar. But yeah, we did our first one, and I know that several of you came to my place, and we did that. And we just talked about Hawaii for 3 hours, and it was friggin' awesome. And I was like, well, geez, if it works so well with Hawaii, maybe it will work with other places. So, in the rest of 2019 and early 2020, I continued to make trips out to the Midwest and the Mid-South, and again out to the West this past winter. So I brought back a lot more material, and I decided that it might be a good idea for people to see me profile a different city each time and the road system of that city, and kind of go into some of the details of how these cities' freeway systems came to be. Maybe you could say that I was drawing a little bit from Steve Anderson's work, kind of coming full circle there. Doing my own kind of presentation, of course, not writing pages and pages on it, but I kind of feel like there's some sort of parallel you could draw there for sure. So that's the story with the webinars. We've done many of them. Any city that I visited, and for the most part in 2019, and so far with this year, we just wrapped up the cities from February's trip. So we did all of those. The virtual tours were just conceived just for fun. They were an excuse to get a bunch of people together and watch footage of a particular road and talk about it. One of the things that I kind of thought about was going to the movies, and instead of watching a lousy movie like Star Wars: The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker, watching the Garden State Parkway go by for 2.5 hours. Like, to me, that's a much more interesting thing than watching a crappy ass movie, right? And then also around that time, Mystery Science Theater 3000 was something that I kind of looked at and said, well, these guys are kind of watching a movie and commenting on it in the background, so you could take my videos, because it's not that hard to do, because they're all uploaded in real time anyway, and you'd want to present it in real time. So just string a bunch of them together and make a full, feature-length presentation, if you will, and see what happens. Get a few people together and get them to react to it. And I have to say, I didn't think that the tours would be as fun for you guys as I think they've turned out to be. I think you guys have really taken to those.
Yeah, those are a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's really the only reason why I wanted to do them, was just for fun, just to get a few guys together and talk about a bunch of stuff on the air for a little while and enjoy a nice road trip in the process. It feels like the perfect thing for us. So
the live drives, there's another part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your inspiration to start doing that for us? That's been a big thing now with COVID. We all get a chance to tune in every day.
Oh, yeah. Well, I feel like we can break this up into two different sections, right? So the live drives, people have said in the past that I got my idea for live drives off of Big Rig Travels. I honestly, when I did my first live videos, I didn't even know about them. I didn't know they existed. So, this was something that I came up with on my own. I kind of went through a phase a couple years ago where I was experimenting with ways to, interact with my audience that was different from just the standard comments section on a channel video or on my Facebook page. So I thought, well, doing a live feature or incorporating live content, seems like an interesting thing to try out. I think it kind of coincided. There was this big jump in interest with, channels doing live material. Like, this must have been about 3 years ago now. And you saw it everywhere. Like, I don't know if it was because YouTube just really ramped up their live video capability or whatnot, but everybody was everybody was trying it. So I thought, well, why not give it a shot, Set up now the problem with doing live drives early on was because I had a really crappy ass smartphone. So the first ones that I did weren't that great, but I was able to set it up on my dash the same way that I could set up my regular camera, this one here that you remember. And I would just stream parts of my road trips. I believe the first one that I did was like a trip, a part of a trip home from Delaware back to New York. Like I would just stream for like an hour or two, and I think I was encouraged enough by what I saw that I decided to kind of try to do it more often, and I don't think there was any real regularity to it. It was just something that I would feel like doing in the moment and say, hey, you know what, today's a good day to go live for a little while. So, let me go live from, I don't know, Stockbridge, Massachusetts or whatever, and just go live for an hour and drive around, and people will watch it, and that's cool. Like I'm okay with that. And it does really feel like people are in the car with you at times, especially if you get the more interesting members of the audience. My car only fits 5 people legally. I swear to God, it feels like there are 20 people in my car on some days.
Well, I've been calling it America's commute home right now, so.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what we're doing right now. So I came home from Phoenix off the end of the 2020 trip on February 23rd, and I basically, I worked in the city at the time, in New York City, and I watched the whole thing explode right in front of me. I mean, Steve lives in New Jersey across the river, and Doug, you're not all that far away either.
And I have family on Long Island, so it's, a hot bus. Basically, it's a hot issue for me as well.
Yeah, so we all watched it, right? Like, we all watched this thing grow and become such a debilitating thing on our country and whatnot. But with that, obviously, came the fact that sports leagues were shutting down, and movie theaters were closing. Basically, the entertainment business in general was being shut down. And there was a gap there. There's a gap in live, unscripted programming, right? And I didn't approach it from the angle of programming. I approached it from the angle of giving people something to do, giving people something to watch. Because I think that, in times when we're stressed by stuff that's going on around us, whether it's COVID or whether it's, what we're dealing with right now with the fallout of what happened in Minnesota, I think we all kind of need a distraction sometimes. We need something to take our minds off of what's around us. And if I can do that by streaming my commute home every day for a period of time, and even a few people, if only a few people got something out of it and enjoyed it, that's great. I'm a selfless I'm a pretty selfless guy, I like to think. And I approached it from the angle of trying to help people, believe it or not. And the first one that I did on March 12th, it was only supposed to be a one-off. I was not supposed to be doing this every day. Because I think March 12th was when things started to shut down, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I remember driving home, and when you watch that video, it's the regular afternoon commute. Like there's congestion all the way up from Queens all the way up through Westchester County, like there usually is. And then you start getting these news reports coming in, about stuff closing down, people testing positive, the NBA shutting down, movie theaters shutting down, Broadway shutting down. And I was like, and I remember thinking on the way home, I'm like, whoa, like this is going to be way bigger than anything we've seen in a long time. So I decided that right then and there that this was going to have to be a long-term series. I'm a history nut as well, so especially American history. So when I have a chance to document something that's atypical or unusual, I usually don't shy away from trying to do it. And this goes for a lot of different things as well. It's not just history, but Steve, you remember when the Turnpike Bridge over the Delaware got shut down for a period of time, and I happened to be in the area around when that happened, and I did a video of driving the Pennsylvania connector eastbound away from the bridge, because I don't think they would let you exit to go west at that point.
Correct.
You could get on eastbound at 130, but you couldn't get on westbound from the main line. So I did this video of like getting on at 130 and connecting with the main line, and there was nobody on the road. It was just me. And I remembered that from 2017 or whenever that was. And I said, if everything's going to really shut down, this is a really interesting opportunity to not just give people something to look at, but also to document a historic event that's happening around us. Nobody has seen these cities as deserted as they were at the end of March and in April. And we may not see them like that again in our lifetime. Who knows? So this was a historic opportunity to document something. It wasn't just about streaming live and getting views and likes and subscribers and all that. To hell with all that bullshit. This was about documentation to me. I mean, that's really the essence of why I do it, why I did this series, and why I did the Streets of Manhattan video series, which is now appearing on my channel, because I wanted people to see what happened. I wanted to, we all know what COVID is and what it does, and all the effects that we hear about. But I don't know that everybody saw what it actually did to our society. Like, we all were just locked away inside. Like, nobody was out on the streets, right? So to be able to document that was just an incredible experience for me. And it's definitely going to be one of my more memorable series, I have to say. It's funny that that series doesn't get a lot of views. I find it really interesting that the series that I enjoy the most, where I enjoyed making the most, usually they have the least number of views. And I'm okay with that. A lot of people wouldn't be okay with that. A lot of people are in it for, the monetizing and the subscribers and all that, and they can't wait to tell you how many they got. But I'm in it to have fun. I think at its core, that's what I'm here for. I'm not here to cater to anybody. I don't have, a board of directors telling me what I should film. I'm my own guy. I make the calls on what to upload and all that. And I think it's really interesting that, and I wonder why that is.
Yeah, they've still got a lot more views than most of my videos, so wouldn't worry about it too much.
I'm not saying I am worrying about it. I think it proves the point that I am my own independent creator, and I don't worry about what other people tell me I should film. I'm much more interested in filming the back roads in the swamps in Louisiana than I am filming I-70 through Denver. Like, there's something that's really appealing to me about certain things. And again, this COVID stuff, like, who the heck else was doing COVID videos? That's not something that I think was very rampant. So, these are series that I know that I did with the best of intentions, and I hope that someday we'll look back on them and really appreciate them.
So you've lately been really pioneering a lot of things. You've created the webinars, the virtual tours, all of that. Now, more recently, we did the first virtual road meet together. So that seems like you're still innovating new ideas. So what other concepts do you have in mind? Are there things that you've tested out and thought about and decided that they weren't any good, or are there some ideas for different formats that you might introduce going forward?
Well, I will start out by saying that necessity is the mother of invention. So that's why we had the virtual road meet in Cincinnati. That's why, that's one of the things that I say. Like, I don't invent things that there's no issue with. Like, I don't come up with a new idea unless I establish that there's something missing. So it's hard for me to say like where I would go next from here. Like, I kind of did some of that stuff by the seat of my pants as well. Like, I think you can kind of tell that with, especially with the virtual tour stuff, which is an absolute free-for-all at times. And we are refining our method of presentation with that. We'll figure it out eventually. But I don't know that there's anything like imminent on the horizon as far as like new features and whatnot. I always try to think of ways that I can interact with my audience. And if I can present a different spin on something that they've already seen, or just create a new feature altogether. I'm an engineer, I'm an innovator, so I'm going to want to try it out, right? Like, that's what engineers do. Like, we solve problems. We recognize if there's something out there that we can do to improve our product, we give it a shot. And look, I like to think that everything that I've tried has been successful to this point. And I'm sure that there will be stuff that I'm going to try that isn't going to work. But that doesn't mean that you don't stop trying to improve your product, improve your connection with your followers. And I think that's the big thing. Whatever happens in the future, I'm sure you guys will be interested in it, and I'm sure you'll either love it or you'll hate it. But until then, I can't wait to see what's next. I can't wait to see what we come up with.
In particular, as one idea is, if you ever thought of an interactive drive, very often you do your videos and you have the news in the background, and on all your commutes right now, it's the road and the news, and you don't talk. You'll sometimes type, but you don't talk to people. Is that something you've thought about as an innovation, or decide that you really don't want to go that route?
I don't like hearing my own voice.
So this video, you're going to delete this video, in other words.
No, I didn't say that. I did not say that. I've watched videos of people who do that, and look, I think there are some great content creators out there who do that. 504 Road Trips does a thing where they film they film a section of highway and then they insert like a narration over the top of it, you know, like in sort of like an editing process that they do. So it's almost like they're kind of giving you a play-by-play of a certain section of road. That's just not something that I could see myself doing. I certainly appreciate the different slant on things. You know, I can't stand listening to myself and going through like editing and all that stuff. You know, like, it's just not something that I would want to do. As far as like doing like audible content like while doing live streams, nah. Because you know the thing is, you still gotta drive. You still gotta pay attention to what's going on around you, right? So usually if I chime in the chat of a live stream, it's like 1 or 2 words at a time, and it's like 1 or 2 hours at a time, right? So I try to have the live drives be as close to what I typically upload as possible, because I want there to be still a sort of a predictable presentation style there. I think that's one of the things that people appreciate about the live drives, is that they could pass off as normal videos of mine because they're presented the exact same, right? Real time with the radio in the background and ambient highway noise in addition. I don't think I would ever want to try to add my own voice to that. Let someone else who's a much better speaker than me try it.
Not us.
Not me.
Right. So, next question. Obviously, the new New York Bridge project has so far been one of your biggest professional accomplishments. But what do you feel is your biggest personal accomplishment regarding Roadway Wiz?
Staying on the air for 10 years. You know, staying on the air for 10 years and being as prolific as I've been. If you look at, you know, the body of work, I don't know that you could argue with the fact that it's one of the more miraculous bodies of work on YouTube. You know, the fact that, and I'm not trying to brag when I say this, but when you upload on average 3 to 4 videos a day for a decade, that's major league right there. That's hard to do, and I'm not really sure how I've been able to do it, to be quite honest. I can tell you that, like, when I started uploading videos, YouTube was very different 10 years ago than it is now, right? Like, there's so much that we have at our disposal that just wasn't available a decade ago, and a lot of the primitive nature of YouTube back in 2010 still contributes to the habits that I have today. Uploading videos every day is one of those things where I said, you know what, I gotta get all these videos uploaded and published so that they're on my cloud, so that I don't have another hard drive crash and lose everything. Like, I was still in that mindset when I was uploading stuff. So, and of course, YouTube wouldn't let you schedule things back then. That was a development that came much later. But in the early days, like, I would just upload like dozens of videos every day, and you know, I didn't really think much of it. So 3 to 4 videos a day now doesn't seem like a whole lot. You know, because back in the early days, I would upload them, like I said, 10, 20 a day or more, and it's just kind of another thing I think that people really appreciate about my work is the consistency. You know, consistency in the presentation and the consistency in the timing of uploads. Like, you wake up in the morning, you can count on 2 things happening. You can count on the sun coming up, and you can count on me publishing a video. Like, those are like 2 of the biggest absolute things that you can look at if you're a fan of roads, right? Like, you know those 2 things are going to happen. I think there's value in that. I think there's value in the predictability. And and then the schedule of it. So, yeah, I think the fact that I've been doing it as long as I have is a big accomplishment in and of itself. I don't know that I would single out a single place that I've explored as a big accomplishment, except probably Hawaii, because again, because of the newness of it and the originality of it. Yeah, I don't think I would go any further with that.
I like to call this one the payback question. But since Doug brought up both professional and personal, now I get to ask you about how you view your profession versus the hobby. So similar to what you've asked me, we're both highway engineers by day, we're hobbyists by night and over the weekend. And you got a lot out of me on how I view the profession and where I draw the line. So how about now it's your turn. Tell us where you see the line between professional and personal, or how blurred together that line might be, and whether you run into any conflicts between the two.
I think the thing that was very difficult especially when it came time for the new New York Bridge project, and here, you want a little poster here? There you go. I still got a couple of these hanging around. So this is the event right here. When it came time for that, I think I really had to work at separating out my hobby and my love of bridges from my professional obligations as an engineer. They don't pay you to be a fanboy. They pay you to make decisions based on what you are given and what is in front of you. You are not paid based on how many videos on YouTube you have, or how much you might have read about a certain bridge, online from somebody else. And that's actually a lot harder to do than it sounds. I know that, that project was something that I had circled in my mind for many years before I ended up on it. So going into it, I kind of had the fanboy mentality, and I had to work really hard for a period of time to ditch that. As far as the channel is concerned, there really wasn't an opportunity for there to be any kind of overlap with it because, well, we didn't have a deck to drive on for a long time. But I will say that there was a lot of overlap with, photography, road photos and, project photos kind of started to blend together. And of course, as part of your job as an inspector, it's your job to document, what you see and, like your operations and whatnot. So, that became something that was very important. But again, you have to be able to separate what you want to see happen from what you actually know is happening. And I think that, by the time I left that project, I really had mastered that, I think. And of course, when you get thrown in, it's the biggest bridge project in North America, right? Yeah, you go from being, a 24-year-old just out of college, working at a local internship with DOT region, and then you get thrown right into the middle of this huge-ass project with, thousands of people working on it, and like the best engineers on the planet all converging on this one place. It's quite a
You're
shock.
right, I was part of it.
You were. I remember that. Yeah. That's right. It's a shock. It's a shock to the system, and you really gotta commit yourself, and you gotta leave all your fanhood things at the door when you go in every day. And that's not just for this particular project. It's for our line of work in general. We might have things that as hobbyists we would like to see, but that doesn't mean that what is actually best for the community is what should happen. So I think it's very important that if you're a hobbyist like us and you get into the engineering field, that's great. My first piece of advice to you would be that you cannot go into your professional obligations as a hobbyist. You go into them as an engineer. And you can do all the hobby stuff on the side. You can do whatever the hell you want on the side. But when you're on the clock for a client who is relying on you for your engineering judgment, you better deliver for them in a professional and objective manner.
Based on that, do you feel like following career path on bridges, does that enrich the enjoyment of the hobby for you, or does that still remain completely separate?
I think that it has given me a different perspective on it. I don't think that I would have a certain kind of knowledge of the profession if I wasn't in it. Like if I was just a hobbyist reading about these things on the side, I don't think that I would have the same knowledge bank that I have now that I've been on the inside of one of these big jobs. I think it definitely, you're right, it does enrich the experience. But again, it doesn't, the hobby does not contribute professionally.
Right.
I have a lot of information that I can contribute to the hobby through my work. It's interesting how it can work that way. Like you can gain a lot of knowledge professionally and then funnel that into your hobby and share that information with people. It doesn't work the other way around, right? Like you can't take... Well, but you can't take... Again, I go back to using the term fanboy, right? You can't go into a job as a fanboy and have it work out.
To a point.
But unless your name is Steve and you're a PE in New Jersey.
Well, I mean, there have been two times so far. One was I designated a 1920s highway signpost as remove the sign, keep the post instead of remove the post. And another time I convinced the project manager on the other side to preserve a section of the original median barrier, that original Jersey barrier from the 1950s, that because we're removing the last stretch now. So there are sometimes opportunities I've found to bring that in. I don't know, maybe working on bridges, they're already saving pieces of the old Tappan Zee Bridge. I doubt there's much you can really do there.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was never ever going to be a place for preservation as far as that's concerned. But as far as the examples that you bring up, look, I've never been in a position where I could make a call like that.
You're on the construction side versus design, yeah.
I'm the one that's actually taken down the signpost that you want to keep. So watch it, buddy.
I'm not telling you where it is, yeah.
No, you're going to make me find it. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah, I in my line of work in the construction realm, there really isn't a lot of wiggle room. You receive a set of plans, you receive your lifting plans and your NPT plans, and you say, okay, this is what we got to do, this is what we got to build, this is where we got to build it, let's go. You don't really have a chance to say, hey, well, gee, maybe we should keep this post, this looks pretty good. No, if it says remove on the plans, you gotta do what you gotta do, right?
Yep.
So.
Okay, so on the topic of enjoyment, I know that you're also interested in music, and I believe you play the cello, if I'm correct.
Yes, yeah.
Yes,
right.
and I know that we've talked about. Well, I know that you had you went up to the Saratoga Performing Arts Center and was on a workshop with the Philadelphia Orchestra years ago. Basically met Yo-Yo Ma. So one question that I had, basically regarding music and the hobby and engineering, would you say there's any crossover or benefit from your musical training that has helped you become a better engineer, or possibly into how you conduct your online channel?
Oh, music is huge. Music is one of those things that always finds a way to ground me. Construction is a very high stress business. I think you would agree with that.
Right.
Or you could certainly understand why it would be.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of safety related stuff. Protecting the public safety is probably the biggest thing that we do in the construction realm. And you're always one misstep away from something going wrong. I mean, it's not like you're always teetering on the brink of disaster, but on any given day, especially if there are cranes involved, for instance, there's always a non-0% chance that something could go wrong, which is a stressful thing to think about. It's stressful because I care. It's stressful because I care about the people around me and the people driving by, because I'm one of those people. You're one of those people, right? So I'm very concerned about stuff like that. But I always come back to two things that always have found a way to keep me grounded. One of them I alluded to before was photography, and the other thing is classical music. I have been around it for a big part of my life, like since the end of grade school. And as you said, I played the cello all the way up through my early years in college, when I had to give it up because I just didn't have the time for it anymore. But I always hung on to that musical training / education that I had, especially in my high school years, which is when it got really serious. But yeah, like what you mentioned before with going up to Saratoga that summer with the Philadelphia Orchestra and getting to hang out with the Yo-Yo Ma's and the Itzhak Perlmans of the world. I mean, it was just this amazing turning point experience for me, and I've never forgotten my roots as far as music is concerned. I'm still always listening to something, whenever I can, because I think music is very therapeutic to me, and it definitely does ease a lot of the pressure that I might feel on any given day. I know that when we go back to the new New York Bridge again, can you imagine what that's like when you have 1,000 people on site and you have 50 cranes on site, and you've got all this material on site, and just how chaotic that can be at times, just with people coming and going between places, trying to move material around and all of that, and there I am in the middle of all of that at the 12 o'clock lunch break,
listening to Beethoven on my iPod. I can't really explain why I did certain things the way that I did them, but I know that things like my classical music background really have come back to help me a lot. Just help me relax, if nothing else, because this is, as I said, it's such a stressful business at times, and I think we all could use a little bit of de-stressing every once in a while to help make things a little better for us.
Right. So changing gears a little bit, this is the second question that you had coming to you, but this one you were asking for. When we were talking last week, you said there was a turning point in the hobby where you spent an overnight far from home, and that led you to take things in a different direction. You ended up going national with your videos. I think since you asked us for it, tell us more about what led you down to Florida, what you found there that influenced you to change directions like that and get us to where we are now.
Yeah, so for about the first 4.5 years of the channel's existence, it was very much a localized thing where I mostly filmed in the Northeast. I was mainly interested in the Boston to Washington section of I-95 and all the points in between. That's what I was predominantly interested in. I didn't really care about, going national with it. I saw what I was doing as just this little engine that could, heroic, Northeast specific kind of thing that, and I was very content with that for the first few years or so. And in the fall of 2014, I was sitting at home, and a buddy of mine from college who lives on Long Island had brought his family up to Putnam County to go hiking for the day. And this is a true story, all right? And so sit back and enjoy this. So there you go. I got a call from him like mid-afternoon or so, and because he knew that I lived in the area. He had been to my place once, so like he kind of knew that I was in the same general vicinity as him. Well, it turns out that his family's van had actually died at the trailhead, and so they needed a lift to get somewhere, to get to like somewhere that they could like rent a car or something, just to get back home. Because remember, they came up to Putnam County from like Nassau County, so they had to get back the same day, right? So I go down there, and I meet with them, and turns out that in the crowd is his sister who lives in Gainesville, Florida. Well, she doesn't live there anymore, but she lived there at the time. And they were so moved by the fact that I came out to meet them and help them out and get them going on their way again that she made me an offer that, if you're down in Florida at some point, you're more than welcome to come and stay with us for a few days. And, I let it pass for about a month or so, and I said, you know what, that doesn't sound like too bad of an idea to just go down to Florida and chill for a little while. So I took them up on it, not really giving it much thought, not really thinking about the implications of that, like realizing, oh, I actually have to drive to Florida. Okay, now this is getting a little more interesting. So I drove down there in like January. This is January of 15. Stayed down there for a week and a half, and I remember when I was, because it doesn't take you, I guess you could do the drive straight if you really wanted to like kill yourself, but I stayed one night outside of Charleston, South Carolina, and I always look back on that night as the night that the whole scope of what I was doing changed. This wasn't about just the Northeast anymore. This wasn't just about me documenting my favorite drives from childhood anymore. I was going off in a completely different direction at this point. You might say that I passed the point of no return, because out of that 2015 trip to Florida came this great desire to travel the country and see not just, friends of mine in other parts of the country, but also see, the cities and see the natural wonders and all of that. I think that's the natural stuff has really come into play the last couple of years, especially. It really planted the seed for me to want to see this country. Because I grew up in the Northeast. I grew up all my life in the Hudson Valley. by traveling, like all I really did was go down to the Jersey Shore every summer. Like I would go to Delaware, I would go to Binghamton. Like I really like we never went abroad or anything like that. We never traveled west of the Mississippi. So I had never seen any of that stuff. Like up until like my first time west of the Mississippi was in 2017 when I went down to New Orleans. Yeah, so like, you could say that I was a very late bloomer as far as traveling is concerned. But that first trip to Florida is what really got me going on that arc to really see more stuff and see more of the country, because I knew that I was missing out on certain things. And I kind of wanted to play catch up, if you will. And I'm still in the process of doing that, but I feel like, you know, I'm getting there. But you can trace it all the way back to that chance encounter at a trailhead in Putnam County. That you can really that, and then also the subsequent drive all the way down to Florida.
Okay, so we're both New Yorkers, and I know that you've traveled around the Hudson Valley, New York City extensively, as well as spent some time in Western New York. What is a region of New York State that you haven't traveled around as much that you'd like to visit more extensively, and why? And also, too, what are some other places around the country, around the world, that you would want to travel more extensively as well?
Well, as far as New York is concerned, Doug, you're going to be borderline shocked to hear this, but I've never been to the Finger Lakes.
Oh, you got to go.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
Yeah, Steve and I will take you sometime.
Oh, really? Okay. Maybe I'll.
Yes, now I am. Okay.
Yeah, I guess we're doing.
You got to see more. Yeah, you got to see more of New York too, Steve.
I guess we have.
I've been to the Finger Lakes, but not on them. So I guess we're going out in Doug's kayak.
Now, how the hell has Steve been to the Finger Lakes and I haven't? That's what I don't understand. But again, I think it comes back to me being a late bloomer, right? Like I never really strayed too far from where I had to go until relatively recently. So yeah, I mean, heck, I didn't go to the Adirondacks until I was leaving college. So there's so much in New York that I haven't seen, which is kind of interesting to say. Like I've lived in New York pretty much all my life, and there's still so much of it that I have not seen. I think that New York is deceptively big as a state.
It is.
People think of New York and they think of the city and they think of maybe Long Island, Rockland, and Westchester, but there's a whole big state north and west of there that deserves.
Yeah, Long Island. That's not Long Island. New York is, I believe, actually both basically taller down to south and wider east to west than Oregon.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That does make sense. Yeah, I can see that. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in New York that I probably should see at some point. But topping the list, I would say, is the Finger Lakes region.
Yeah.
As far as nationally, well, I said this when I came home from the trip in 2019, and I said this again when I came home from the trip in 2020 in the winter, and that is I have to see more of the West. I didn't even scratch the surface of the West in terms of what I could see, and that's including the stuff that I did in February. Yes, I did the Grand Canyon. Yes, I did Monument Valley. But those are only 2 landmarks out of so many that are out there. And again, like I want to, like the natural wonders of this country are something that I want to spend more time seeing. So maybe that'll give you a hint as to where I'm looking to go next. But I would think that there would be a lot more where that came from before too much longer. Yeah, there's something else that's kind of crept into my mind too, especially since I came back from Hawaii, and that is the idea of being present and being able to film road videos in all 50 states. Which, as far as I know, hasn't been done to this point, unless Steve has done it.
Not all 50.
Not all 50, yeah.
Now
That's
I'm curious.
now you really want to do it, right? I kind of think that would be cool. Just to say, we got 50 states, and you can go to any one of them, and there's video footage from all 50. Down the road, I don't see that being a short-term goal. I mean, that's still, I think, many years away. But I do think that that's something that I could work towards. That is something that does appeal to me.
I've got 30 of the 50 covered.
Well, that's not that bad. You're not that far behind.
Nah. So while we're on the topic of videos, we've touched on where you want to go next, but do you have any other places in mind, maybe cities you haven't visited, or places that you've been but you didn't take the videos that you wanted, or you weren't taking videos that you want to feature for upcoming, whether it's a webinar or virtual tour, something, some part of the country in particular that you want to document via video? Or is it just the West in general?
Well, I started. I think my channel has become known as an epicenter of video footage for metropolitan areas in North America. So, I would say that you have two different things going on here. I want to see more of like the US 163s of the world, and I also want to be able to see more of the big cities. So, and I think that, what you're talking about with the webinars and the tours and all that is geared more towards urban stuff than it is rural stuff. I think that it kind of presents itself better if you're talking about an urban area as opposed to a rural one. At least that's kind of the feeling that I get as a presenter. So, I do think that before too much longer, and again, I stress that because, we are not out of the woods yet as far as COVID is concerned. I don't think it's out of the question that you'll see me in some other Western cities before too much longer.
You want to hold that close to the vest for now.
I'm not telling you jack. So,
all right.
And
I'll see you in Utah next year.
Well, you know what though? That brings up an interesting point that since I started doing this, I have been very coy about telling people about my plans. I don't like to do that. I don't like to tell people what I'm thinking about doing until I've actually done it. And I don't really have a good explanation for why that is, other than I'll just give you the generic answer of because it's good business. I don't like the idea of telling people that I'm going to go somewhere and then having something happen or whatever, and then just not being able to do it. Like, then you'd have people saying, well, you said you were going to go here.
Where's the Hampton Roads webinar?
Yeah, right. But
We'll come to your house.
Yeah. So I'd have an angry mob following me if I didn't come through on something that I promised people. So basically, what I decided was I'm not going to promise people anything. I'm going to say, look, I'm working on itineraries for road trips, and I hope you like what I bring back. And I'm sure that people will like whatever it is that I decide to do west of the Mississippi, and we'll just take it as it comes,
So where do you see this channel going the next 5, 10, 20 years from now? Is there a point at which Roadway Wiz is complete and you start a new chapter in the hobby?
Well, 20 years from now, I hope I'm retired. I hope I'm not doing this 20 years from now. You know, what's really interesting, when I was interviewing all of you guys, there was no wavering on any of you guys' part about the future that you see for yourselves in the hobby. And the reason I always asked you guys that was because I was curious if I wanted to know what you thought, but I also wanted to know if there were other people like me out there who said, you know what? I could very easily see myself not doing this several years from now. I think that, yes, hobbies are important to people and they're important in our lives, but I also don't like the idea of being trapped by something. Like, if you do something for a long time and you become really successful at it, it's very easy for you to get stuck in the same pattern and have that be the only thing that you're defined as. I don't like that idea. I've done this for 10 years already, and you might ask, well, if you've done it for 10 years and you've been as prolific as you've been, like, certainly you would have hit a wall by now. And you know, people hit walls at different points, you know.
I hit my wall 13 years in. I hear you on that.
Yeah, I hit a wall, and I basically had to blow things up and you know, basically start fresh, and starting fresh actually worked.
Yeah. But, you know, maybe, and I think we all have different definitions for what starting fresh looks like. But I can tell you that in 10, 20 years, I hope I'm doing something completely different than what I'm doing right now. I don't know what that is. I was watching an interview with Paul McCartney. And this was a few years ago, and this was when he was like in the early years of the Beatles, right? And one of the commentators said, gee, it'd be really sad to see him prancing around on the stage when he's 40. And I kind of feel the same way. Like, I hope I'm not doing this, at least as prolifically as I am 10 years from now. I kind of want to, you know, I want this to be a chapter. I don't want it to be the only thing that I do. And that doesn't, and I'm not telling you that I'm going to delete the channel and these videos are no longer going to exist. That's not what I'm saying. I think, however, there are different ways of interacting with my audience on YouTube and giving them different ways to see content. There are different things in general to do with life. And, you know, I would never tell you that I'm an unwavering road enthusiast for life. I don't think that's a responsible thing to do, because you don't know what's going to happen many years from now. You know, life has a way of throwing things at us, and, you know, as we age, our interests change. So there's no way for me to be able to tell you that I will be on the scene at 10, 20, however many years from now. Now, what I would like to say as an epilogue to this, I've met so many amazing people in this hobby, and I think that's probably one of the coolest things about my involvement all these years, is getting to meet you guys, being friendly with you guys. When we get together, we don't really talk about roads. We talk about a lot of other stuff. So for me, I'm able to separate out the hobby from you guys as people. Like, I don't see you guys as road enthusiasts. I see you as people that I like to hang out with.
Right. One of the nice, basically, things that have come out from, you know, being in the hobby for me, and, you know, I would imagine the same with Steve, is, you know, some of the people that we've met have essentially become lifelong friends.
Yeah, and we would be lifelong friends even if we weren't in the hobby anymore.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we might have met each other because of the hobby, but if I walked away from YouTube, first of all, I would be totally okay with it if I did, because I would, if I did that, it would be because I wanted to do that. Like that's the path that I wanted to follow. It wouldn't be because somebody told me to. I could live with it because I know that I've met you guys and I value you guys as friends, and I know that we would stay together as a community and we would still be able to, you know, do our thing and whatnot. And I don't think that any of that would change, you know, if I left the scene. Maybe that's a little hard for some people to believe, but I honestly believe that. I honestly think that this hobby of mine is not the thing that I want to define my life. You know, this channel isn't what I want to define my life. And as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't. Because I've already got a legacy that is very easy to see. If you want to see what I'm talking about, go down to the riverfront in Tarrytown, New York, and tell me what you see there. You know, that's the mark that I've left. This YouTube channel doesn't really mean jack to me compared to that professional accomplishment. I'm always going to want to judge myself based on what I do professionally. Yes, it's nice to have a YouTube channel. Yes, it's nice to be, you know, somebody who people look up to and all of that stuff. But that's not really what I want to be remembered for. I hope that I am remembered for what I do in the years to come, and also for what I've done professionally to this point. And who knows, like if my future is, if my calling is to stay on YouTube for the next 50 years, then so be it. But I'm never going to sit here and tell you that that's absolutely going to happen. You know, why shut the door to possible future opportunities at this point? I got a long way to go with my life, man. I got a lot of stuff to see. I got a lot of things to possibly do. I just hope that I'm not trapping myself with continuing to go down the road of YouTube star. Hopefully there's other stuff out there for me.
And Doug, I think he answered most of your follow-up, but
Yes, he did.
I guess just to cap that off, is there a specific thing, Dan, that, because you've asked us all this, and Doug, I'll let you finish the question from there.
Yeah, so is there some event or something in your life that would make you say, I'm done with the hobby aspect?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things. You know, family related. You know, getting married, having a family. I wouldn't want to keep doing this during that period. I mean, who would want to? You know, something else coming along, like some other interest, you know, like some other hobby. You know, like it's impossible to say what exactly could come along, but there absolutely is a scenario where I say, I've had my fun with this and I'm going to do something else. And, you know, I think that I don't know if you guys have picked up on this, but in the last couple of years, there's really been a heightened sense of urgency with the rate of my travels and how ambitious my travels get, because I do feel like the clock is starting to tick a little bit. And I don't really know why that is. I don't know if, you know, if there's an actual reason for that. I don't know. I feel like I know it's out there that there's a chance that I could walk away. And before I do that, I want to make sure that I've had all the fun that I want to have with it before I do that. But yeah, again, Doug, your question is one that I've been asking a lot of people, and I ask it because I was curious to know if I was the only one who felt the way that I did. It sounds like I might be, but I just don't want to take for granted this time that I have. Because I know how special this community is. I know how special my travel hobby has been all this time. And it's not that I'm afraid of losing it. It's just that I want to enjoy it while I have it in the moment. Because I don't know what lies ahead several years from now. It's impossible to say. And I really just want to take this time to just have fun with it, you know, because I don't want to look back 20 years from now when I'm doing something else and say, you know what, I really wish I had done X, Y, and Z. I wish I had seen this. I wish I had traveled here. You know, I wish I had hung out with Doug more, you know, like, I wish I had hung out with Steve more, you know, but you know that you understand what I mean. Like I'm in this period right now where I'm kind of looking back at what I've done, and I'm looking ahead, and I'm not really sure what's going to happen going forward. So I'm saying, you know what? I just want to enjoy what I have in front of me right now, and I hope that that's enough.
The murder hornets are coming. Get it in now.
Yeah, that's another one, right?
So one last tough question for you.
Oh boy.
For some reason, I seem to have given myself all the tough ones here, but we were talking last week.
That is.
Yeah, it's almost like I assigned the people to the questions. But when we were talking last weekend, there was a lot of back and forth well after our. I think it was one of the webinars, but we were talking for 2 hours after that about where you see the interview series going and how it's sort of evolved into documenting different perspectives from road enthusiasts and, you know, past and present, from the early days up to the modern days, and getting all of our perspectives, all of our stories documented. So I want to ask you more about how this has evolved, where you see it going, and maybe where or when it's going to end. What's your vision for all of this?
Well, the interview series, you're right, that's another feature that got started. Actually, it started a few years ago, but it really took off with all this COVID stuff, because we were all sitting at home and we had nothing better to do than to log into Skype and, you know, bitch about the world for 2 hours. You know, like that's kind of what we've been doing. But I forget. Doug, did we get the idea for the like the history of the Road Geek hobby from the chat that we had? Is that
I mentioned, I know that I had brought it up with Adam Prince, I want to say last year, and then we kind of put it to the side, and we just kind of brought it, like when we were discussing it on on our side chat. Basically I think that's when we decided to start doing the interviews.
Yeah, because I know that you guys have been talking about, and I think Steve, you've been a part of this as well, with like the history of the hobby, right? And like you've kind of
because the online hobbies, online road geeking's been around for about 25 years now, and there's a lot of things that have went on over the years that are good to preserve and document.
Yeah, because I know that I came into this relatively late, right? And again, like, and I mean that literally, because I started my channel in 2010. I didn't meet any of you guys in person until 2014 or later. And when I finally met some of you guys in person, some of you had been in the hobby for 15 years or more, and there was already this massive amount of stuff out there about, road meets and, road trips and travels that you guys have gone on, and you guys have had websites for all those years. So I think it's the interview series that we did this year that we're ending season 1 with this one is that I wanted to kind of get some of my favorite content creators on screen and have them talk about their work, have them talk about their backgrounds and their, if it's relevant, their professional, dealings, and especially Steve. And
so grateful for that one.
Yeah, I bet you are. Just to kind of give people a bit of a profile of some of these people that I know they've heard about, but maybe they've never met before, or if they have met them, maybe they don't know them that well. So it was really an opportunity, at least as I saw it originally, to kind of just profile a bunch of us and say, hey, we're the guys who are at the front of the hobby. We're the guys with the websites. So why not talk to these people? These guys probably have a lot of, information that they could, contribute in a discussion. I think the turning point for me, it was not the chat that I had with Gribble Nation and those folks. It was the chat I had with Steve Anderson. And I said, well, Steve's a pretty important guy in the hobby. He goes back a long time. He's got a mountain full of information about the hobby. And I remembered what you guys were talking about with the history of the hobby. And I said, well, maybe we ought to just put all of this together. Maybe we ought to just get everybody together and just record everybody's memories and history and document it. Because there's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of websites, some of which have gone defunct as far as I'm aware. I know you guys could comment more on that, but there's a lot of stuff that was created really early. I'm talking about in the 90s that that really laid the foundation for the hobby that we know today. And as I started to kind of poke around with some of that stuff recently, I found it really interesting, and I thought, we really ought to try to preserve this stuff, or at the very least, at least get all of our, memories and stories and references preserved, so that we have something like some sort of an archive, for the future. And I think that, it's not so important for me. I'm not advocating for this because I want to see this. I'm advocating for this because I want you guys to do it. Because, and especially you, Steve, and you, Doug, you guys are two of the cornerstone people of the hobby. You may not want to hear that from me, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway on live TV, and you're going to sit there and you're going to like it. Okay? This is not just the history of the hobby. This is your history. This is your story. And we should really want to preserve that. We should want to put all of this together in some format and have it available for all of us, for posterity. And I don't know what role I would have in putting that together. I know that we haven't really talked about it that much. But it would be really cool, I think, to have everybody contribute to something like that. Because this hobby's been around long enough. We're about 25 years or so, right? Roughly. Yeah. So, we're kind of at the point where we've got a quarter century of history that, is just kind of sitting around and isn't really properly compiled and organized so that everybody can find it. And I just wonder if this is the time to start doing this. You know, what's interesting, I'll draw a little bit of a parallel here, but in construction and in engineering, you don't want to wait until you need something in order to build it. You want to be out ahead of the curve. So if a bridge is due to be replaced, that means that it probably still has some useful life left in it, but you want to replace it before it literally starts falling down, right? So you want to be out in front of it. You want to preempt, whatever the issue might be. We've got 25 years of history here, and I wonder if this is the time. Like, you don't wait until you have to do it. Like, this is a good time to do it because I think that people would want to do it. Doing it out of desire to do it versus doing it out of necessity are two different things. And they lead to two very different products.
Right.
And if you're more into it because you want to do it, it leads to a better result. And call me crazy, but I think that we could use the interviews and, me doing my, 60 Minutes impersonation as an interviewer on YouTube to really kind of hash out some of this history, because I think that a lot of it is really fascinating. And there's so much about the hobby that is not mainstream knowledge that people don't know. There's so many stories people don't know. I hear news stories all the time from you guys that I'd never heard before. And these are from meets, they might be recent, they might be 20 years ago. But like all these stories that I'm hearing you guys pour out time and time again, it's just really amazing stuff. And I really hope that we can get together and preserve some of that.
I don't think we talked about the Fart Smock Bridge.
There's another new story.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, there's so much out there that I think, as a fan of you guys and as a fan of the hobby, I really think we ought to preserve somehow.
Yeah. And there's a wish list of people who I'd like to basically interview further, like Alex Nitzman, Brian Farr, the Route 20 guy, basically, and the list goes on.
Yeah, I mean, this is season 1, I guess, if you want to call it. But if I was to do a season 2, yeah, there would be a bunch of different people on there. I think you named a couple of the big ones with Alex. Of course, Alex being a big influence on me in general.
Yeah.
I'd like to go down the road of more of the kind of influential people in the hobby over the years. I think that's...
Jeff Kitsko.
Yeah, I mean, you could come up with a list
Big amount.
easily, I'm sure, yeah. I mean... But again, I think it would be in the interest of documenting the history of the hobby. I think that's kind of what this is turning into. It's not what I set out to do, but I do think that that's what it's turning into. And of course, in season 2, I would have to get Steve on again so I could get him to shut up, because I finally, in the season 2 interview, I would ask him the correct questions. So, he
Oh, you mean about the hobby instead of about engineering?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think I have any more engineering questions to ask you.
Thank God.
Maybe I'll throw in a couple just because you said
I'll ignore them.
Yeah. But, no, I mean, with some of these interviews and some of these personalities that I talked to this season, I think that we only really scratched the surface on what a lot of these people have to offer. I know that I feel like when I talked to you, Doug, and with Adam and Tom, that, my God, like, we could spend the whole day just batting stuff around.
Yeah, and basically after that interview, Corco, he had mentioned, basically you guys should do a podcast, referring to Adam and I, because Adam and I, we've been basically going back and forth on things for years. So that's actually something that we were looking into. We were talking with Brian LeBlanc, who was with Gribble Nation initially. We could have a couple of podcast episodes down the road too. You never know.
Yeah, and that's another way to innovate and to bring something new to the table. Oh yeah, wild cookie dough appeared.
Required in all videos.
Yeah. She is super effective, that's for sure.
Yes.
But yeah, like the idea of the podcast, I think is great, and I think it's really geared towards you guys. I think you guys would be great at that. And it comes from your work as bloggers, right? Like, you guys have a lot of information, for one thing, but you're also very good at communicating it. And I think that if you're going to do a podcast, you have to be good at both of those things. And I think that's something that if you give it a shot and you worked at it a little bit, I think it would be awesome. Yeah. Because, as technology evolves, the hobby evolves, right? So, like, in 1997, when, we still have dial-up internet, road meets aren't really a thing yet. We just have our own little websites. But then gradually, as the technology evolves, we're able to do more things. We're able to get together with road meets, and then YouTube happens, and that becomes a thing. So now people are filming roads and putting those online. And then with, recent, leaps in technology with smartphones and all that, we're able to do other things like live content, podcasts like Doug mentioned. There's so much out there that, we've been able to tap into over the years, and it's only going to continue, I think, going forward. We'll continue to find ways to innovate, because a lot of us in the crowd are engineers, or wish we were engineers, and we have that kind of go at 'em spirit where we can come up with new ways to entertain people. I think that's really what the goal is going to be going forward.
So we're at the 2-hour mark right now, so those are our heavy-hitting questions, and so far I've got 3 questions from our viewers. This would be a good time if you're holding on to any questions. Please type them in the live chat, and we can answer them now before we do our wind-down questions at the very end. So other than Josh is not allowed to ask questions, but other than him, the first 2 questions came from Mr. Matte. First, he asked, does the videoing of the roads, at least pre-COVID, take a lot of time from any other hobbies you have?
Not really, because this is the only real hobby I've got right now. And again, like, it kind of goes back to what I said before about being, like, pigeonholed into a hobby. Like, having something like this be so time-consuming, it's very easy for you to be defined by that thing. I think the thing that people don't really realize about my video work is that it really doesn't take all that much time to film everything. I'm only maybe on the road for 28 days out of a year. And yet in those 28 days, I film enough material to have a year's worth of content or more, because it just happens in binges. Like, for example, the trip out to Arizona in February, I had over 800 videos on that single trip, and that's enough to keep me going for like 8 or 9 months right there, if I wanted to upload every single thing from that trip. So again, like, does it take away time? Not really, but again, like, my hobby is a little deceptive in that it looks like I'm always on the road because I'm always uploading something, but in reality it's much different because I'm uploading stuff from the same trip for a few months at a time in some cases. So I might be, like, I'm sitting at home in New York, right? And I'm right now I'm publishing stuff from New York City, but before that I was publishing stuff from Texas and Nevada. But I was doing that while I was sitting in my living room. Like I wasn't out there for 2 months. I was here the whole time. The only time I was out in Nevada and Texas was for 3 days total out of that whole trip. So there's really not a whole lot of time that goes into it in general. But it just looks that way when you see how complete the coverage is and you see how in-depth and how thorough everything is. It makes it look like there's a lot more time being spent there than there really is.
Yeah, and I believe you actually did a webinar of how you basically do all your video work a few months ago.
Yeah, I did a tutorial video of how I upload things and how I, not just on YouTube, but also on my Facebook page where I'm very active. Facebook page basically has turned into a way for folks to preview material.
Right.
That's still like a while out from being uploaded. That was really that was kind of my motivation for the Facebook page, because for a long time I didn't really know what to do with it. But it kind of occurred to me that with me having such a backlog of material, maybe it would make sense to give people sort of a sneak peek of material that not only the stuff that would be uploaded within a short amount of time, but also the stuff that might not see the light of day for a long time.
So the next question from Mr. Matte is on the practical side of things. What are things to look for in a dashboard cam, especially one that records for hours on end when, say, documenting entire lengths of highways in the live meets?
Well, the live meets are filmed with my smartphone. So any smartphone with a YouTube app and a Streamlabs app will suffice as far as that's concerned. I think the thing that trips people up the most is the dashboard mounting, because that is very much a state secret of mine.
I've seen it in action. I knew the answer to this question, but I have to ask it for the benefit of our viewers and see what you're willing to divulge.
You think you're going to get an in-depth answer from me, don't you? Well, here's what I'll tell you. When you look at it, and I know, Steve, you've seen it, when you look at the setup that I have, it's very easy for you to think, my God, this is like the most ridiculous, stupid thing I've ever seen in my life.
I'm an engineer. It's simple. I appreciate simple.
Well, yeah, and again, it goes back, I guess, to my engineering mind, right? Like you see a problem, you identify a problem, and you come up with a solution for it, right? So when you look at the solution that I came up with, you might think to yourself, my God, this is absolutely horrible. This is going to be terrible. And then you watch the video afterwards, and you're like, this is like the coolest friggin' thing ever. This is like this is the best quality thing that you could have possibly come up with, given the absolute piece of you-know-what setup that I've got. So that's probably as much as I would want to tell you as far as the mounting. And I really can't get too specific anyway, because every car's got a different dash anyway. So even if I told you what I did, it wouldn't necessarily help you with your particular car and your setup. You just gotta experiment. Play around with it.
That's for the live stuff. What about the stuff when you're recording the videos to bring back?
Same thing.
So using your smartphone. Did you have that other device for that, though?
You're talking about this stupid thing, right?
Maybe.
The actual video camera?
Right.
Yeah. But no, like, you're right that's how I set it up for live material and the other stuff as well. It's all kind of fundamentally the same.
But what is that particular video camera? What's the model, or how did you select that? Maybe what asking.
This is a Kodak ZX1 that, again, this is the original one that I owned. And I've owned this one since 2009. It's very much out of date in that you can't find it at your local electronics store. You can only find it on Amazon.com. It does record in HD, as you can see when you watch my videos online. It's HD quality, and it's portable. That's another thing that I like about this thing, is that it's portable. It's easy to carry around with you. It takes AA batteries, which are easy enough to find, and because of its size and its shape, it's easy to mount somewhere. That's what I found. So.
Okay.
You know, I'm not going to tell you what you should buy. Like, I'm not going to be like the guy who pitches a product or something like that. But I would just say that you should pick something that makes sense for what you want to do with, you know, with whatever your video ambitions might be. You know, I don't know what you guys or what anybody watching would want to do. Like, yeah, we're all individuals, right? We all have our own different ideas of what we want to document and how we want to present it. And so that's really up to you to decide what you want to do. It's not up to me to decide, thank God. But, you know, just do your thing. Have fun with it.
Our third question, I believe, came from Matthew Wong a while ago, asking, have you ever encountered close calls with distracted drivers or speeders in your active construction zone?
Distracted drivers, or what was the other part?
Distracted drivers or speeders who enter your active construction zone.
I mean, everybody speeds, so let's discard that one.
But close calls, so.
I guess it depends on what you're defining a close call as. You know.
So in my experience, in a work zone, they've got an air horn, and if they see someone coming, they might blow the air horn like, this guy is entering the zone he's not supposed to be. Is there something like that where somebody almost hit you guys or actually entered the zone and hit something while you were out there?
Oh, something like that. Well, when I worked on the bridge all those years, we didn't have to worry about that because we weren't anywhere near traffic. At least not until the bridge was open. So I don't have the kind of experience with road work that a lot of people have. It is fair to point out that there is a lot of that stuff that happens. You know, you do get a lot of close calls, as you call them, because people just aren't paying attention for whatever reason. But I wouldn't say that I've witnessed anything all that exciting. Actually, the most exciting thing that happened on the bridge project was something that I wasn't even there to see, and it was when the crane collapsed onto the old bridge. And I wasn't even at work that day. I was down the Jersey Shore. And when it happened, I started getting text messages from all my coworkers wondering if I was okay. And I'm like my phone's blowing up. I'm sitting on the beach at Wildwood, and my phone's blowing up with people texting me if I'm okay. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sitting on the beach. What the hell is the problem? And then they started sending me pictures of this crane that fell on the bridge, and I'm like, oh, bleep. So that, but that's the only thing that, you know. That was definitely a close call, don't get me wrong, but I just wasn't there to see that, so I don't count it in my tally.
Killer asks, what is your go-to traveling music if you're jamming on the stereo on a long road trip?
Nothing, to be honest. Because when I started... because I got into the craze of doing all the radio broadcasts in the background. As you know, that's something that I've become pretty well known for, is having the news talk stations on in the background of broadcasts. And I just got in the habit of doing that over the years, that I never really broke out of it. And
so even if you're not doing a video, that's what you'd be listening to?
yeah. And in fact, the reason why, so we should probably spend a couple minutes explaining this. So the talk radio thing happened because in the early days of me filming stuff, particularly in urban areas where we know that congestion is prone to happen, I needed to have something going on, some sort of way of being able to tell where incidents were occurring, where traffic was slow. Keep in mind, 2010, this is before smartphones were a thing and traffic apps were a thing. So we still were very dependent on radio as a source of all that information. So especially when the New York City stuff was first filmed almost a decade ago, I would have the radio on in the background specifically for the purpose of listening into the traffic reports to see what was up ahead. Because the last thing you want to do when you're filming something is to film a bunch of bumper-to-bumper traffic, right? So...
Yeah, you give us 22 minutes, you'll give us the roads.
Or something like that, yeah. So that's really where that started, and then I never really got off of that because around the time I was thinking of getting off of that, YouTube introduced a lot more restrictions on background music, and copyright claims started to become a thing, and I realized that one of the only things that was safe as far as background noise on videos was talk radio. So I'm not going to listen to FM radio while I'm driving and filming because it's just going to get flagged and it's going to get blocked or whatever. And obviously I don't want that. So, if it's possible to have something on in the background that breaks up the monotony of the ambient traffic noise, then sure. But chances are it's going to be something along the lines of what we come to know now and what you're used to hearing from me all these years. 1010 Wins and any other news stations in the major cities around the country. It also kind of goes back to my interest in historical documentation in a weird way, because you're driving down a road while watching one of my videos and you're also listening to the news of the day from that day. So you have kind of two different things going on here. You're watching the roads, which is what you came here for, I'm sure. But there's also a bit of history going on here because you're also kind of learning about what was going on in the world when that was filmed. And depending on the day that it was filmed, there were some very interesting things going on in the world, as we know.
I know you mentioned that one to me before when I asked about the news playing. We were driving. Yeah, you said that you wanted that to give the context to the video going forward.
It adds another dimension to it, because like a pre-recorded music track from a band. I mean, yeah, when it was made, but if you stick it in a video, there's no context really, for the video as far as from the historical angle, and I really am big on the history side of things. It's just another way to introduce historical documentation into the works, I think.
That makes me feel bad about my videos now.
Steve,
last question.
Steve, I'll coach you up if you want.
Yeah. No, I got one more question, and then I'm going to hand it over to Doug from the moment he said any other questions. I'll let Doug do that and all the wind down questions himself because I've been taking the user questions thus far. So the last words you'll hear from me, Mark102 Gaming asks favorite interstate, and I might broaden that to also give us your favorite roadway overall that you've seen.
Favorite interstate? Man, you're gonna make me pick one. Man, you guys are tough.
I can pick just one.
That's interesting that you can narrow it down like that.
I'm gonna have to think about it for a while.
And I will be driving that road in about 12 hours from now.
Okay.
I-80.
Yeah, that is an interesting choice. I guess, you know, maybe I'll work my way to a final answer here if I talk about it. But, you know, 95 was a big one for me. 95 through Wilmington, Delaware, specifically, was a big landmark for me as a kid. I would say that as I've traveled the country, I've seen a lot of stuff that's really cool. But I guess if you made me pick one that I could only have one interstate of all the ones in the country, I would probably pick H3. Just because, again, the novelty of going out there and documenting it, and also seeing it in person, and just how remarkable it is as a road, as an engineering achievement, and its place on the island as a major thoroughfare. It's freaking hard to beat that. So if you put me on a desert island and said you could only have videos of one interstate, I probably would pick that one. And there are other ones too that I really enjoy. You know, 376 in Pittsburgh, 278 in New York. What else? I really like 295 in Florida, believe it or not. That's one that I really like. You know, like in every city, there are drives that I like, and in some cities I really enjoy more than others. But you know, there are a few that kind of stand out as the interstates stand out as being really memorable. So those are probably the ones that I would kind of gravitate towards right away.
Well, I know that we had one question from Matthew Wong. Do you have any other footage of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia besides I-95 straight through the state, even if it is private or unlisted? So that is his question. And then there's another question about which interstate is the longest, and that's I-90. But we'll go back to Matthew's question.
Well, yeah, you don't have to ask me that one. Yeah, you guys know the answer to that one. Which interstate?
Yep, I-90.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, as far as that's concerned, no. Like, I have not actually I haven't driven through any of those states since that first Florida trip in 2015, which was when all that stuff was filmed. I did pass through those three states on the auto train the following year, but I don't count that because I didn't get off and drive around after that. But no, I haven't been back to the Carolinas or Georgia since then. And I know what the inevitable next question is going to be, so I'm just going to answer it right now. When are you going back? I don't know. Who knows? COVID is still running rampant. Who knows? So.
Right. So I know that you were planning on going to the Outer Banks city meet. Back in April.
Yeah.
Of course, that's going to be next April now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That would have been a great event, and I'm sure it will be a great event whenever it happens. Yeah. But yeah, that would be my first time back in the Carolinas since then.
Yep. Yeah. So on to basically the wind down questions at this point. At some point we're going to have a cast party instead of a wave party. So what is your favorite beer and your favorite food?
Where'd you guys come up with these wind down questions? I gotta. Whose idea was this? No.
Well, I mentioned it. I mentioned at some point we should have some fluff questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we asked you all the hard stuff now.
Why didn't I think of that?
This is easier stuff.
Jeez, I could have asked Steve a whole bunch of fluff questions instead of engineering questions.
I'd give you the finger, but this video would get flagged if I did.
I'll wait until we're off the air for you to give me the finger. All right.
You got it.
Okay.
I'll hold on to it for you.
All right. Favorite beer? Well, I'll show you what I'm drinking right now.
I have been to the Guinness Brewery in Dublin.
And I'm very jealous of you that you have. I have not done that.
And if you get to go there, you should go there and go to the Gravity Bar.
Oh yeah. A trip to Dublin is definitely on my bucket list for sure. Yeah.
Visit the rest of Ireland too while you're at it.
Yeah. I mean, if I went there, I would want to see the whole country, no doubt. But yeah, definitely go to Dublin. See the.
My favorite part is Galway. So
okay. Yeah, I would imagine that like once you're out in the country, it's really spectacular out that way.
It is.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, going to Dublin, having Guinness, jamming with Bono, that's a great time,
At Temple Bar, yeah.
Yeah, So, what was the other part? The other favorite beer and favorite what?
Favorite food?
I've always been a pizza guy. Good pizza, not like Pizza John's in Baltimore pizza, like good pizza. Okay. So
like the stuff that we would get, basically in New York or New Jersey.
Well, that's what I'm used to, right? So my bar is set very high, I guess. But
you don't like grotto pizza?
I actually find it more tolerable than some certain people, but I find it more passable. I'll say that. I'm not going to tell you that it's the greatest thing ever, but I find it passes. For what it is all that, I think it passes.
Well, I will say basically in certain parts of the country, there's a chain of pizzerias. Actually, they sell frozen pizza only, and it's called Papa Murphy's.
Well, I have nothing to do with that one, so I can.
Yeah, I had stopped there coming back into Dallas, Oregon, visiting my mom, late one evening. So that was the only time I ever stepped in one of those places. But being from New York, even around Albany, most of our pizzas, basically the New York style that you're used to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Understandable. Was that?
I'm leaving these to you, Doug.
Okay, and so one other fluff question is, when the nutrias die, what do you want for your next car?
Oh boy,
CRV guy through and through. I've been driving them for 21 years now.
Yeah, you're on CRV number what now? 4? Wow.
Yep, I named it Silent Cal after Calvin Coolidge. The third one was named after Chester A. Arthur.
Okay.
And and the name of it that I gave was Chester A. Honda. Then my twin brother called it Chet RV.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that I've ever thought about naming my cars. The one that I drive right now, I just call the Wizmobile because I'm lazy and it's an easy thing to call it. I think that I would pick a car based on what I'm doing with my line of work professionally. Because as you know, I'm really big on construction work and also field work. I love having the hatchback. The two cars that I have owned to this point have both been hatchback cars. Not station wagons, but 4 doors with a hatchback in the back where I can keep a lot of stuff and easily reach it. I probably would go that route again. And I'm not a flashy guy. I've never thought it was, important to have a flashy car. So that isn't important to me. Like functioning in the context of my line of work, I think, is the most important thing. So that's I probably would go a similar route to what I've got now and what I've had before. Yeah, maybe not the exact same make and model like you, Doug, but something along the lines of what I've had.
And so we have one last question from the audience before we wrap things up. This one's from Matthew Wong. He did have one other question. Do you have any particular reasons why you prioritize urban footage over rural footage when uploading? And what he's thinking specifically are cases when you've uploaded interstate footage from two different urban areas but did not publish the rural sections of the same interstate between the two cities.
Well, I have to emphasize that I think the big thing with my channel is urban footage. I think that's what is most desired with my audience. I think it's what they enjoy the most. And yeah, there are people who enjoy the rural stuff, don't get me wrong.
That's me.
Oh, I know you. Yeah, I know you eat that up all the time. I mean,
oh yeah,
I-88, you can't get enough of that, right?
I can't, no.
It's more of a personal philosophy of mine. I always will yield to urban footage if it makes sense. And look, just because something isn't on YouTube at this point doesn't mean that you won't find it there someday. Really what YouTube is at this point is it is a way of taking my catalog and backing it up. So I have the catalog in hard drive form. And it's got all that rural stuff on it. It's got I-55 from St. Louis to Memphis. It's got I-65 from Louisville to Nashville. So just because something's not on YouTube doesn't mean that it can't end up there at some point. I would strongly emphasize that. But I also strongly believe that people want to see the urban stuff more than the rural stuff. And I know that that's what I want to see. I judge my decisions for what to upload based on what I would want to watch myself. And that's, the channel that you see today is basically a reflection of what I would want a YouTube channel to look like. And like if I logged into YouTube and I wanted to watch something and I wanted to find a channel that had like stuff that I was really interested in, I would want it to look like the channel that you see today. It's what you see on it is a direct reflection of what I want to see and also really what my audience wants to see. If you really want to go down the analytics route, I've learned some things over the years from that stuff. So, yeah, I'm always going to be interested in the city stuff because, again, that comes back to my roots as an engineer and my childhood interests. But there is always a place for rural stuff as well. You just might not see it right away. And that's fine. Really, there's not much of a difference between the urban stuff and the rural stuff if you think about it. It's still a video. It's still something that I filmed. So it is part of the canon of my body of work. You just gotta find your way to wade through it and make the decisions that you think are best for the channel and for the viewers and let everything else fall in line. And I know that those who have been following me for a long time, I find it hard to believe that they're going to stop following me because I didn't upload any rural content. Because they started following me because they loved the urban stuff. I don't see that changing because of any decision that I make. I think that they all understand that, I bring a certain level of quality and thoroughness to the table, and I think they respect that, regardless of what it is that I upload. So, I think that was a very political way of answering that question, but I think you get the point.
I think that was a pretty good way to wrap this up.
Yes.
Sort of the philosophy of your site there. So rather than throw more fluff at you, because got to save some questions for next time we see you in person. Dan, thank you for giving us the opportunity to turn the tables on you a bit here, and a chance for us to let the viewers get to know you better after you forced us on them. They come here for you. They suffer through us. I know there's your usual contingent who wonders where I am commenting on your live drives, but they come here for you mostly. So I'm really glad that you came up with this idea to be interviewed, and I certainly learned some more stuff about you today. So very, very appreciative that you selected me as one of the interviewers. And also when you made me one of the live chat moderators, I really appreciate that, and I feel like I'm a small part of roadwaywiz, and it makes me feel good.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask some questions as well. Basically, I think it gives a good idea of basically where you're coming from on this as well. Of course, as I said before, basically, one thing that I've learned over the years is that road geeking is basically about the people.
Yeah, I mean, there's the roads are one thing, but the personalities are what really make it memorable, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah, and that's why we always tell the stories about road meets and the people and the events that took place. And if I may circle back one more time to the preservation of history aspect of what we were talking about earlier, I think that the people and the memories are what we're going to really think about in the future years, not just the roads and what roads we've clinched and what cities we've visited and all that. We're not going to really talk about that. We're going to talk about the people that we've met along the way and the experiences that we've had with them.
Absolutely.
Yep. And I have one last question for Dan. Any closing thoughts
question?
that you have?
Oh, jeez.
Yep. Any closing thoughts that you have?
That was the question?
Yeah. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, you know what? I think that we've kind of said it all to this point. I think I am grateful for the opportunity to be a visible member of the community in whatever manner that I can be. And it's hard as we reach 10 years. It's hard for me to believe that I've been doing it as long as I have. I'd never, like, if you asked me 10 years ago before this channel was created if I would be on YouTube for a decade and I would be uploading the kinds of material that I would be uploading, I would have said, get the hell out of here. You're not serious. And it's really just amazing to me as I look back and as we get ready to acknowledge the 10-year anniversary of this channel coming up next month, just how far things have come over the years. And I as we get ready to celebrate that, I want to definitely thank you both for being such a big part of the recent history of this channel, and I hope that you continue to be partners in this to some extent as we go forward. And I also want to look, there are a lot of people in the audience who have been following my work for a number of years. I'm very happy that people have chosen to follow along with my travels over the years. It's not something that I've ever asked people to do. I've never asked people to subscribe to what I do. So I would just say thank you for choosing to follow. I didn't prod anybody to hit the subscribe button or anything like that. You guys did that yourselves, and you should be happy for that. You should be happy that you made that choice. And you should be glad that the channel that you support is as popular as it is today. And yeah, I guess it's possible that I would still be uploading videos 10 years later if nobody was watching them, but I doubt it. People are watching it, and it makes it all the more interesting for me. It makes it all the more exciting to know that there are people who are, whether they're watching it after I upload it, or they're watching my live travels along with me. It adds a dimension to it that's really, really cool. And I just want to thank everybody who has been a part of this journey for the last, my God, 10 years. I mean, I started the channel when I was 22. Can you believe that? It's been 10 years. My God. It's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward. You know, what am I doing in 10 years? I know we touched on this before, but you know, don't worry so much about the future. You know, have fun in the present, and just enjoy yourself, enjoy the company of those around you, and let the chips fall where they may. And whatever happens, I'll react to it as I feel is necessary. I'll keep traveling as I see necessary. I'll keep uploading videos as I see necessary. And I'll try not to take myself too seriously. How's that sound? That's it.
All right.
All right. I think that's a wrap. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to, basically hold court, so to speak.
Guys, you obviously picked up on a lot of stuff from watching me for a couple months, so I'm proud of you guys for taking that and translating it into an enjoyable episode.
We'll look forward to your live commutes resuming Monday, I assume.
Yeah, we'll have another week of that starting on Monday. Yeah. So,
all right.
You know where to find me.
All right.
It's hard to miss me these days.
I'll just ask King Boo.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyway. Guys, that's it, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks to everybody for watching. Your normal, regular programming will resume on Monday, and I'll have something random for you guys tomorrow, which I have no idea what the hell I'm going to do yet, but I'm sure I'll figure something out. And hope to see you guys in the live chat for that, too. So, for Steve in New Jersey and for Doug in Albany, New York, who were your hosts tonight, because I had nothing to do with the production of this presentation, so if you didn't like it, blame them.
Or blame Canada.
Yeah.
They're not even a real country anyway.
Yeah. Thank you all for watching. We look forward to seeing you again on our next presentation. So until then, take care.